It's hard to imagine this being a controversy today, but less than 10 years ago, DC Comics was struck with a new label that they were homophobic and actually prevented their creators from following through on a storyline that would have seen two female characters get married. Is this true? Did DC actually deny gay rights in their comics? Let's get into that. Hey everybody, this is Perch. A walk down memory lane. Although it's weird, this is 2013, and doesn't it seem like this was like 50 years ago? I don't even know if people remember this particular controversy, but basically what happened was DC was publishing Batwoman during the New 52 time, and writers J.H. Williams III and Haden Blackman abruptly quit the book. Saying, they were a fairly celebrated group that had generated a lot of good publicity for this title, and they had done 24 issues. They had been writing they'd been creating a run that was fairly structured, and what I mean by that is they had put a lot of effort into kind of building the plots and getting the title to a certain area. It definitely felt like a title with some purpose. And part of it was that the lead character, Kathy Kane in this case, was gay or was a lesbian, and she was in a relationship with Maggie Sawyer. The two fell in love, and by the end, Kate had proposed. Basically, they were leading to a bat wedding. But like all bat weddings, it seems, it was fated not to be. So, just as kind of the story was moving along, it left off on a cliffhanger. Suddenly, Haden Blackman, J.H. Williams III announced they are leaving the title, definitely to some anger from fans. And the belief or the commentary that came out afterward was that DC was simply not ready for a same-sex marriage within their company. And so then some outrage spilled out. But it's curious, if you look back on it, if this had happened in the last, say, 2-3 years, I think that outrage would have been massive national news. As it stood, it was big news, but it kind of simmered around. Fans and the outrage cycle wasn't quite where it was today. But then the story takes a strange twist, and where Williams basically came out and said, hang on a second, let's not accuse DC of homophobia and rejecting gay marriage. It's not that at all. It's actually that DC doesn't like marriage, period. And so that was, people were like, oh, what? That seemed a little strange, but it definitely checked out with kind of Superman was not married and, and just other kind of relationship things that were going on at the time. So, then what follows up is at a convention, Dan DiDio, the DC co-publisher at the time, he gives a statement basically saying, quote, heroes should not have private lives. They should not have happy private lives. They put on a cape and cowl for a reason. They're committed to defending others at the sacrifice of their own personal instincts. It's something we reinforce. If you look at every one of the characters in the Bat family, their personal lives kind of suck. And so that kind of resonates with the crowd. And then he says, Tim Drake, Barbara Gordon, Kathy Kane, it's wonderful that they try and establish personal lives, but it's also just as important they put it aside as they know what they are accomplishing as the hero takes precedence over everything else. This is our mandate. That is our edict. That is our stand with our characters. We didn't hear at the time many statements from some of the Batman writers. Scott Snyder was doing his run on Batman at the time, but just some general kind of turmoil, and definitely some websites continued to go all in on the homophobic angle, and then the very confused over the whole, what are you saying, you're anti-marriage. And so here's where I'll take a step back for a moment and say, it's weird in comics that this no marriage bit has been so common, whether it's things that they've done with Superman or probably the most legendary of them all, the One More Day scenario where they erased Spider-Man and Mary Jane's marriage for the reason of, Spider-Man just isn't fun when he's married. That's not what fans want. Turns out that is what fans want, and I think there's plenty of evidence that says that Marvel's denying it on that fact. But regardless of all that, this whole event was just kind of a cluster in the sense that it was never really explained in a satisfactory way. It got on the wrong end of a lot of stories and messaging. And but if you look at kind of what happened during Tom King's run with Batman, where they massively promoted a wedding that then didn't happen, and in unhappiness, there's definitely a common thread, I would say, in comics as an outside observer now watching it for quite a while, that marriage as a topic is kind of the third rail. It has to be. It can't just be a happy thing. It has to be a dark thing on some level. Even the conclusion of Tom King's run, where Batman kind of gets married, or sort of gets married, says we don't need to be married to get together. We don't need to be married to be married. Kind of comment. It's this kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Now, does that work with fans? I mean, it depends. It's all in who likes what story. But that combined with this this very strange event, and what really strikes me, because I think you talk to a number of comic creators, you talk to people, and I guarantee you there's some people in DC listening to this right now who are shaking their heads, or maybe they disagree with some of the points here. I'm trying to just lay out the facts as I know them. The part that I can kind of anchor onto as being particularly strange or odd is how we got to this point. Blackman and Williams III, there was not a surprise like panel. It's not like the comic was just trundling along and then in issue 24 it's like, hey, let's get married, and everybody's like, oh, I didn't see this coming. It was they played up Kate and Maggie's marriage. They telegraphed it. I mean, the romance and the build was not quick. It was through his run. I mean, there was at least a good solid year, I think more, where they were pushing in this direction. Kathy Kane was a quote unquote out lesbian. It was not she wasn't a secret lesbian. It was all very kind of above board. And so the creators in this case, and the editorial, you have to look at this and go, how did it get to this point where suddenly editorial was going to step in and say no, causing the creators of one of DC's more popular titles to bail? It was strange. It was strange that it got to this point. And now people would tell me, and I'm sure people will tell me, oh, there's a lot that was going on behind the scenes that I don't know. Yeah, probably so, and I'm love to be educated. Please do. But from the outside, from a retailer or for a fan perspective reading this stuff, you had a lot of questions like why did we get all the way down the road with this romance and this wedding if we were just going to then kind of pull the rug out from under it, bring in a new creator, I believe Mark Andreyko, as a new writer, and he started 2 issues earlier. Williamson had posted that I guess the issue 25 that was written and created won't come out. What went on there? And what's strange is, these tweets at the time, again, this is September 2013, they're all still up. So you can still see J.H. Williams, writing away and comments coming out. What's also weird, and it indicates that at the time there just wasn't a lot of care. Williams basically announces on Twitter, I guess a new writer starting at Batman 25 means that issue 25 we wrote already isn't coming out. And there's, 28 retweets, 6 likes, 23 comments. I mean, okay. I think various, I'll post some lame nonsense on Twitter and get more than that. So it's very weird. This got not even close to as much attention as you would expect. But it also signifies a very weird just moment in comics. And again, I'll take a different angle with it. It's not are people homophobic? Is the lesbian relationship good, bad, etc. It's how do you do a comic where you get so far down the road and then it just, the editorial's like plugging away, and then it's like, oh, let's stop publishing this. Let's change the direction completely, anger the creators to the point that they leave the book. And, you don't release a comic that's already been written and presumably maybe paid for. It leaks out, the Hollywood Reporter and other websites are actually commenting on it, reporting on that. And then you just kind of bump along and life goes on. The whole event kind of derailed Batwoman. Batwoman as a character was gaining a lot of steam within DC, and then just kind of went nowhere after this. I mean, she's still around. Other creators have certainly used her, but the popularity of the character, definitely, if you saw the chart, they flattened the curve on the character. So just an odd moment in comic history. Everybody has their own theories. People were secretly homophobic. Why do comic editorial and publishers seem to hate marriage? Why, is this true that the fans really don't want it? Doesn't seem so. And just how do you plan a comic book and then just kind of abandon it? You're left with more questions than answers. So I wanted to do this video to just get out the basics of this moment in history. This is about 7 years ago, less than 7 years ago. It's very strange to think about a story like this happening less than 7 years ago. It just tells you how much has gone on and passed in this time. Anyway, ask your questions in the comments below. There's a lot of odd comic moments. This is one of them for me. Just all around. Just what happened? Why did it happen? How was it handled? Just peculiar. Hey, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Would love to have you on board. Introduce to a friend. Get somebody else in here. I know there's a lot of channels out there. Way more content anyone can possibly consume, but I'd always appreciate your time and energy over here. So thank you if you're here. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch. Ask me questions. Have me dig into some comic past. Happy to do it. And thanks for listening.